The Story of the Sleeping Princess. It is said that a king and a queen lived in a beautiful palace in a distant city, and ruled this city with love and peace. But they were not happy despite having money, jewels, and palaces, as they were not blessed with a child to decorate their lives. One day, the queen gave birth to a very beautiful child, and the king and queen were very happy with her. They decided to hold a big party in her honor, to which all the residents of the city would be invited, in addition to 7 fairies, each of whom would wish the princess a good wish that would inevitably come true later. Indeed, the drums beat, and all the residents of the city attended, happy with the birth of the beautiful princess. The 7 fairies sat at the dinner table, and the king had prepared a golden plate for each of them. The first fairy wished that the princess would be as beautiful as a butterfly. The second fairy wished that the princess would have a sweet voice like a nightingale. The third fairy wished that she would play the most beautiful music in existence. The fourth fairy wished that she would be a wonderful ballerina. The fifth fairy said that she wished the princess a pleasant mood that would not be spoiled by anything. The sixth fairy wished that everyone who saw her would love her. When the 7th fairy wanted to make her wish, an old fairy entered the palace, wearing a black hat and a black scarf, and carrying a wooden broom in her hand. She was a fairy who had left the kingdom hundreds of years ago, but she returned angry when she learned that the king had not invited her to the party. She wanted to take revenge on him, and wished that the beautiful princess would die at the age of 15 in a prick from a spindle that would hit her finger. Everyone was shocked by her evil wish, and sadness spread throughout the palace. The wish of the 7 fairies and the old fairy would come true. The queen cried over her daughter's fate, but the 7th fairy had not yet made a wish. She decided that her wish would be to save the princess by letting her sleep for 100 years, not to let her die. That was all she could do. The king decided to collect all the spinning machines and burn them so that his only daughter would not get injured in her finger. And what the fairy wished for would happen. One day, when the princess was 15 years old, she was wandering around the city away from her parents' eyes. She saw a tall tower and was curious to climb up and see what was in it. When she reached the top, she saw an old woman spinning wool on a machine she had never seen before. She greeted her and asked her to introduce her to this machine and allow her to try it. The fairy, who disguised herself as an old woman and had hidden the spindle waiting for this moment, agreed. As soon as the princess tried to try the machine, she pricked her finger and fell unconscious and fell into a deep sleep. The king and queen knew what had happened, so they cried for a long time. But they had no choice but to leave this princess to lie in peace on a bed decorated with gold for 100 years. Meanwhile, the good fairy suggested to the king that she strike with her stick, and the king and queen and everyone in the palace fell into a deep sleep as well, so that the princess would not be frightened when she woke up and was alone. The king and queen agreed to what the fairy said, as they had no other choice. Only a few minutes later, the fairy pointed with her stick, and everyone fell into a deep sleep. She pointed again, causing great and frightening bushes to grow inside and around the palace. In order to protect him during this period, days passed, and there was a prince from another kingdom who used to stay away from his kingdom to hunt. And one time the prince saw this palace, which aroused his curiosity and decided to enter it. And his insistence on entering even more intensified when his advisor told him the story of the princess inside this palace. And indeed, the prince grabbed his sword and began to cut the trees climbing around and inside it, despite the difficulty of that, until he reached the palace and saw the scenes that life had stopped in it. So he saw the guards standing at the doors like wooden boards, and he saw the servants preparing food in the kitchen, and they were frozen in this state. The prince continued walking until he reached the princess, who had been sleeping for many years, so he knelt on his knees and stroked her hair. So she woke up in surprise, and life revived throughout the palace again. So the king and queen were happy with the return of life as it was before, so they thanked the brave prince, and that night they held a great party to celebrate the awakening of the princess and her marriage to the brave prince.